Now, where on earth do we start when we're designing the car body for our F1 racing car? Now, the car body is that main part of your car. It's the part that all of the other components tie into or clip into. It's the part that takes up the most volume of your car. It shows off the colors, the decals, and the aerodynamic design that your team has chosen. We're going to be designing the car body directly after designing the car wheels, which we did in a separate video. Now in this video, I'm going to be just showing you how to start the design for your car body, so where to best get started, because it can be very overwhelming when you start looking at those regulations. And in doing so, I'm going to be following the 2022 technical regulations from F1 in schools, and I will be designing in Autodesk Inventor 2022. I have open in front of me just some screenshots I've taken from those regulations, and this is not all of the screenshots that pertain to the car body. Because it is such an integral part of the car, actually the majority of the regulations do refer to the body either directly or indirectly. So this is not all of the regulations that do with the car body. However, I did pick the ones that are going to be the most restricting when it comes to just starting the design for this body. So let's jump into Inventor here. So what I have open in front of me, this is just a quick design that I threw down in the program to show you where we would start when it comes to designing the car body. I've placed here in yellow, you can see my 4 wheels. The 2 here on the left, these are my front wheels, and the 2 here on the right, these are the back wheels. And what I'm looking at here is a top view of my car, so an orthographic top view of my car. So it's basically like looking down at the top of the car, just like in this image here, if this is a little more clear. So I've drawn my 4 wheels in, and to do that, I started my sketch, and I just drew them as 2-point rectangles. So when you're going into your new part file in Inventor, this is a metric part file for the car body, you can just click on the 2-point rectangle option, place your rectangle, and then place your dimensions on here. Now, in order to avoid these object lines getting in the way of your car body later, or just kind of obstructing it, maybe getting in the way of extrusions, you can just change these to construction lines. So right up here on the ribbon, there's a little construction line button. So we can change these to construction lines, and you can see that because the visual changes from that solid, continuous, bold line to this much thinner dashed line here. So this is a construction line, and the reason we do that is the construction lines are not part of an extrusion, so you can't extrude them, you can't revolve them, and they won't get in the way when you start designing your car body, but you can still dimension them. So you can still constrain them, dimension them, and do everything else you need to them. So that's what I would suggest for you when you start placing your wheels as rectangles on your screen. When I did mine here, I put in all of the tolerances. So we can see, for example, these are my front wheels again. The diameter of my front wheel is a minimum of 28 millimeters and a maximum of 34 millimeters, and it's the same thing for the back wheel. Then we have the track contact width, so this is the width of the wheel that's actually touching the track. It is 12 millimeters as a minimum. For the rear wheel, it is 15 millimeters as a minimum. So I've just placed these in here as a good reference. Now there's a couple of new dimensions in here. So from the inside face of my 2 front wheels, so that is the most inside face of the rotating part of the wheel that does not include the axle. So if you have a bearing that sticks out that's part of the wheel, so glued into or fixed into the wheel, that would be the most inside face. So be careful about this. It's not necessarily the edge of the wheel, it's just when you take the whole rotating component here minus the axle, we're looking for the most inside face of that. So between that inside face and the adjacent one on the other side, there is a minimum of 30 millimeters needed. For the rear wheels, it's the same. So from the inside face of the rear wheel to the inside face of the corresponding other rear wheel, it's 30 millimeters as a minimum. And then the other new dimension we have here is from the center line of our front wheels, so from the very, very center of the front wheels where they line up to the very, very center of the back wheels where they line up, there is a minimum of 100 millimeters required. So these are minimums, meaning you could use a larger number, you just cannot go below 100.0 or 30.0. So I've placed this in here. This gives me a nice visual for my car. So I know that this is the minimum or the smallest my car body can be. It can get larger than this, it just can't get smaller than this. So again, my wheels are here in yellow. Now let's take a quick look at the regulations here. So what I've done is I've put in 7.2, which is the distance between the faces of the wheel here. I've put in 7.3, which is the wheel base, or the distance between the center line of those two wheels. That was that 100 millimeters minimum. The next thing I've placed in here is T7.9, and this talks about the visibility from the top and bottom views of your wheels. So the wheels cannot have anything that stops someone from seeing them from either the top or the bottom view. And in order to meet that, what they've done, what F1 has done, is they've mandated these clearance spaces in front and behind each of the wheels. So here, their wheels are they're flipped from what mine are. So their front axle's over here on the right where my mouse is dancing around. So we can see in front of the front wheels, we need to have, if we look at T7.9.1, we need to have a 3 millimeter by 30 millimeter rectangle as a minimum clear space. Okay, behind the wheels, we need to have a minimum of 15 millimeters by 30 millimeters rectangle clear space. Behind the rear wheels here, we need to have a 3 millimeter by 30 millimeter rectangle clear space. And then in front, we've got a bit of a trapezoidal sort of shape here that is 3 millimeters. Here's the dimensions. So 3 millimeters by 30 millimeters by 45 degrees. And this has to be clear. So if we look at this image down here, this has a height of 65 millimeters, which we can see right up here. So these chunks here, these are 65 millimeters tall from the track surface, and those are unobstructed, which means you cannot have any part of your car that gets into these sections. So that means that these wheels will always be visible when looking at the top or the bottom view of your car. So you need to take this into account when designing your car body, that your car body cannot go into these sections here. And I've done that in my Inventor drawing. So these white or these gray, whatever it looks like on your screen, for me they're kind of white. These white sections are those clear spaces where your car body cannot enter. And I've actually drawn this in 3D here. So we can see that I have those areas of unobstruction, that's the word I'm going for, areas of unobstruction where you cannot have your car body interfere with. Now the nice thing about this, as we look at our top view of our car here, we're really starting to see where our car body is going to fit. Using our minimum dimensions, of course my wheels could get farther apart. They could get farther apart horizontally as well, but this gives me a good starting spot for drawing the body of my car. So I've got my wheels, I've got my areas of unobstruction. Next. So T4.2 has to do with our virtual cargo. Now the virtual cargo, the reason it's called that, it is a kind of an imaginary cargo that sits inside of your car. So your car has to be able to have this shape inside of it. Think of it like the very weird shaped person that sits inside your car. As the person driving the F1 car, you would want to make sure that you fully fit in there in order to race it. So in this case, we need to have our virtual cargo fully fit in here in order to race our cars. And there are quite a few penalty points if this does not work. We can see it's 25 points if this doesn't fit within your car. So a couple of things. This virtual cargo, it gives you all the dimensions right here in the regulations. And these are minimums. As you can see right there, there's the word I'm looking for. So these are all minimums. The virtual cargo can, of course, be bigger. But when you design it, I would recommend just draw it as the minimums. And if you have some more clearance front, back, and on the sides, that's fine. Okay? The virtual cargo has to sit, I'm going to use the word flat here, but basically it has to sit not at an angle from left to right with the car. So if I can describe that, if we look at the car from the front view, see how my virtual cargo is flat here. It's not rocked at an angle this way or at an angle this way. It's not folded in a V shape. So the top and the bottom face of the virtual cargo are parallel is the word I'm going for, parallel to my track surface, which is this guy right down here. So I've got my track surface. and my virtual cargo is parallel to it. Okay. The next thing with the virtual cargo is it does have to fit. I'm just trying to read and talk at the same time. It can be intersected by the front wheel support system, but it does have to fit between the front and rear wheel center lines. So those center lines of the wheel, or that wheel base we talked about earlier, the virtual cargo has to be somewhere located along those lines. And down here we can see a really nice image directly out of the regulations that show a possible location inside of a possible car shape of that virtual cargo. So what I did here in Inventor is I designed my virtual cargo. If I go into my sketch, so I drew in those minimum dimensions that they provided for us. I put the tolerance in here as a minimum. I have centered it so it is nicely centered inside of my car body. Okay, and it is not fully constrained. You can see the lines are purple, and the reason for that is your virtual cargo doesn't have to be right here. It could be all the way back to here as long as it doesn't get in the way of these unobstructed zones. It could be all the way up to, if I can grab it, there we go. It can get all the way closer to the center line of the front of my wheels here. So this guy can move wherever you want it to fit within your car body. So I left this one with a degree of freedom here to move along my x-axis. Okay. Now the virtual cargo can also be flipped, so it does not have to be pointing like an arrow towards the front of the car. So if I suppress this guy and bring in my other one, okay, so I have another virtual cargo here. It's the exact same shape, exact same idea. But in this case, if I jump into my sketch here, my virtual cargo is flipped. So I might want to have it fitting inside my car body like this. And there's no right or wrong reason here. It just depends on the shape of the car you're looking for. Whether it's pointing towards the back of the car or whether it's pointing towards the front of the car, you just need to have this, this volume or this shape fitting inside of your car body. Now your car body can use the edges of the virtual cargo as the edge of the car, so when I design my car body, I could actually have it following the edge of this shape here, and that's okay as long as it doesn't go into that shape. Okay. So this gets you set up, a design like this gets you set up to start drawing your car body. So the next step, once you have all this drawn, and you do not need to draw this into 3D. I did this just for ease of showing you what each of these parts were as I talked about them, but you could draw these as just 2D construction lines like I showed you with the wheel, just to give you a space or an idea of where your body can fit. Once you have all these drawn, you can jump into drawing your car body shape, and that's what these images are showing you. So just for reference here, these white rectangles are our wheels. So these 4 white rectangles are our wheels. The red areas are those areas that cannot be obstructed that we talked about. So for me, in my case, they were the white areas here. And then the yellow area here is the virtual cargo. And then the blue, this is an optional car body shape. So this blue outline here gives us an optional car body shape, and this is one idea. Coming down here is another idea. Both of these have the virtual cargo pointing towards the front wheels, so just a different shape idea that fits within those parameters. And then our third idea here has the virtual cargo going the other direction where it's pointing towards the rear wheels, and again a much different car body shape here. When you're drawing your car body, just keep in mind it has to start between or on that center line of your front wheels. So the car body starts on the center line between the front wheels and then extends to the back behind the rear wheels to give you a space for your CO2 cartridge to sit. So hopefully this gets you started in coming up with a design for your car body. By the end of this, you should have something similar to this image here, where you're looking at the top of your car, you have the outline of your car body sketched out, and you're ready to start drawing it in 3D in Inventor.